Hello, everybody. This is Megan,
And this is Alana.
and welcome to Tea Time Crimes. Woo! Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I've had 2 cups of tea today, so I am.
Watch out.
Yeah, I know. It's
Rocking and
like a
rolling.
normal human being having 8 cups of coffee. Woo!
Yeah. Yikes.
Your speed is not faster. It's just me talking this fast.
Oh my God.
How are you doing today, Alana?
I'm pretty good. I don't really have any exciting news to share.
No, you haven't rescued a mouse or have 10 more cats or won a rugby tournament?
Mm-mm.
Cool.
No.
I have not acquired any more ventriloquist dolls. Other than dogs being annoying, I got nothing. Harlow has eaten everything in his path. Pillows, like things outside, food
God.
off the table.
I'm so relieved that our dogs aren't like that. Like Haka can be like that a little bit, but ugh. It's like, why are you
Will
so
he
dumb?
outgrow it, do you think?
I don't know. It really depends on the dog.
It's so frustrating. Yeah, he was just alone downstairs for a few minutes and we came down and a pillow had its own TTC moment. And guts were everywhere.
Rest
It
in
was a
peace.
brutal true crime. All right, well, let's just jump into your tea review today then. What you got?
Okay. Today, it's a coffee bean and tea leaf tea. Actually, I think that's the first one of their brand that I've done. A friend recommended it, so no pressure to that friend.
Is that the brand or is that the
The
flavor?
brand coffee bean tea leaf? Do you remember it from California? It's like Starbucks.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, it's like a smaller version of Starbucks. I don't know really how they do in other states. I haven't seen that.
You don't know their financials?
I don't. I should probably look it
Excuse
up.
me. If the CFO of Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf could get back to us immediately to supplement this tea review, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
teatimecrimes@gmail.com.
And it's a tropical passion tea. And like
You
fruity black
don't?
teas, it's not always my thing. And I
know,
didn't
with those
ice
wispy
it.
bodies. Oh, boy.
And she said not to put milk in. She usually puts lemonade in, but we don't carry that here in this household.
You don't like lemonade?
I do, but it's not like the only drinks we have in the house are like 3 different types of milks, LaCroix, and water.
And since you can't forage for it, the store is just not an option?
Yeah, I mean,
You could have purchased a small lemonade.
I could have, but we're just going to go for it as it is.
Does this friend know your tea preferences? Has she listened to the podcast? Does she know what she's recommending?
I mean, she knows that I like tea, but she doesn't listen. So she doesn't know the particulars.
Well, friend, I hate to break it to you.
But it's her favorite.
Okay.
So we'll see.
All right.
But let me just start this off by saying Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf writers way better than Twining's Twinnings. Way better.
Twining.
And so they even put a little, there's a short description, a long one, and I'm going to do both, of course. They describe it on the front of it as woodsy, fruity, and sweet. And they even describe its body, medium.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's nice. All right, ready?
Yep.
Imagine flawless white sand beaches and untouched tropical rainforests as you smell the warm, gentle spirit and tropical allure of this exotic tea. Our classic Ceylon black tea is perfectly combined with the sweet, tart fragrance of passion fruit and the pungent flavor of guava fruit. Bright yellow petals of marigold flowers gives this tea a exotic splash. Should be an exotic splash.
Whoops.
But yeah, isn't that a fun description?
That's a great description, and it really started off strong in your serial killer voice.
Yeah.
I was scared until I had to listen to the words.
All right. It smells strongly.
That's pretty impressive that they could get pungent into a description and it
know.
didn't bother me.
I know. I
So.
was really hoping it would.
No,
So
I
they did
actually
really
thought
well.
like that's appropriate.
Yeah, guavas are pungent. Let's be honest.
You're pungent.
No, I shower. Okay. This smells very fruity. It's very passion fruit forward, which makes sense because that's the name of the tea. All right, we're going in. It's just black. There's nothing in it. Okay,
No honey, no cream,
Mm-mm.
no lemonade.
No cream. Ever.
Okay. You know what? Save your judgment. Oh, her face does not look pleased.
It was just, I probably left the tea bag in a little long. It's a little strong. So yeah, it's definitely not a big body. Like they said medium body. I might even say somewhere between petite and medium, even though I left it in for a while.
Okay.
Absolutely getting the flavors of the passion fruit. It settles and cozies in, maybe for like a little hammock swing on the tongue. Yeah. Feel that tropical breeze. It's hard to pick apart the guava from the passion fruit because they're somewhat similar in the strength of their flavors. So they kind of, maybe they're cuddling in that hammock together, I think.
Oh, that's nice.
And there's a marigold breeze. So
together like a fruit
nice.
and a fruit.
Perfect.
Yeah. Are they both fruits? Yeah.
Yes. It's really nice. I do want to balance it with something. I don't know if milk is the right answer. Maybe it is lemonade.
I bet the extra tartness really, with a little bit of sweetness of the lemonade, I bet it really tastes good.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Although I've never put lemonade in tea. I confused.
I know. It's a little shocking.
But I can see how that would taste good.
Yeah. So I would recommend this tea, a tropical thumbs up.
A tropical thumbs up. Yeah. Okay.
Prove me wrong, fruity black tea.
And just an excellent copyright situation.
Oh, excellent. Now I want to look for more coffee bean tea leaf teas just because of that. So
I wish whoever wrote that, like this is some person or a team of people who wrote this and they're never going to hear these compliments.
I know.
The odds are slim, but
yeah.
I hope it makes it to your ears.
I could stalk them on LinkedIn.
Yeah, search. All right, are you ready for today's case?
Yeah.
I don't. Okay.
No, don't make these noises.
I read so many newspapers.
Oh boy, this is the one where you were really stuck in.
Many. Yeah. In the spring of 1923, District Attorney John Bigelow received 2 anonymous letters. What's that?
Last name?
Bigelow. I know. It's not. He didn't know about the movie that was going to come out years later. But he's a district attorney, not a male gigolo.
Bummer.
So he gets these anonymous letters urging his office to look closely at 18-year-old Charles Raymond Avery. Now, the letters claim that Raymond's 24-year-old sister, Mary Frances Creighton, was poisoning him. So, according to the Daily News, the letters read, "Will you please investigate at once? Raymond Avery," his name is Charles Raymond, but he goes by Raymond. "Raymond Avery is ill at his sister's home, 359 or 363 North 7th Street, Newark. Dr. Boyle is the doctor. He says the boy has a bilious attack, but he has been attending 1 week for same. The sister, Mrs. John Creighton, says he has kidney trouble. She refuses to have another doctor or nurse. Also says he is too weak to be removed to a hospital. His limbs are beginning to stiffen. Will you please act immediately? He has come into an inheritance and shortly will come into another. This woman is a liar, excuse please, a thief, and bad at heart.
Wow.
The boy's lawyer is suspicious. Please communicate with him. The Rahway Guarantee Company is his guardian."
Whoa. So how is this letter written? Like, is it like pasted on magazines or is it all the stuff we learned about in the other episode?
It is signed a friend of justice. This person is legitimately concerned. I said there were two. So I assume that was the first one because the second one came immediately after Raymond died.
Mm.
Now, I think that the death happened so quickly that I'm not sure that the letters filtered through the right people or got there in time.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe this to be part of the second letter based off the tense change. So the Daily News does not say which one is first or second, but part of that reads Mr. and Mrs. John Creighton Sr. So that would be
His.
Mary's in laws. It would be
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Mary's
yeah.
husband's parents. Mr. and Mrs. John Creighton Sr. died 3 years ago under the same circumstances. Began vomiting, limbs began to stiffen, and death came. Mr. Creighton's doctor said he would be around in 24 hours, but 1/2 hour after he died. Is death no ground for suspicion? This boy feared his sister as he feared death. Will you please go quietly and catch this fiend at work?
Wow, who's writing these?
So often letters like this are just a scam, right? Some person, like we've seen letters on a couple of our episodes. But these letters have a lot of detail. And it was pretty easy for the DA to confirm that Mr. and Mrs. Creighton, Mary Frances's in laws, had died 9 months apart and a few years back. So the district attorney contacts Dr. Boyle, who's mentioned in the letter, to see if he actually treated somebody named Charles Raymond Avery.
So they actually look into it. I wonder if that
Yeah,
would happen this day and age.
I know. Dr. Boyle says, yes, I did treat Raymond, and unfortunately, Raymond died on April 20th.
Is Dr.
The
Boyle
second letter was,
Irish?
what?
Is he Irish?
It's not pertinent to the story, did not come up.
But I'm trying to imagine his voice, and I think he's going to be Irish.
I don't think he has an accent.
Dr. Boyle, at your service.
Terrible. Can we move on?
Yes.
Okay. So he confirms that Raymond had died on April 20th, and that second letter arrived on April 24th. And Dr. Boyle admits that something seemed off to him about Raymond's death. Off enough that he requested the body not be embalmed.
Ew.
I'm assuming because he wanted further
I
tests to be
know.
run.
Which is good, but ew, still.
Well, not forever, just for the moment.
I know, but things rot quick, you know?
Well, they didn't give it time because the undertaker went ahead and embalmed the body per the Creighton's instructions. So the DA is curious, and he decides to dig a little deeper. Turns out Mary Creighton had spent all of her own inheritance, but her little brother, just as the note said, was just about to come into his. If he died, she became the sole beneficiary of his insurance and his inheritance.
Imagine that.
Not to mention that while Raymond was ill, Mary was the primary caregiver. He lived with Mary and her husband, John.
Ugh.
So this is all pretty compelling, but
Yeah.
still could be an odd collection of events, right? That this neighbor, suspicious neighbor, kind of
sure.
painted with an evil hue. So he wants to do some tests of his own. So to be sure, he orders tests to be done, specifically looking for arsenic in Raymond's organs.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The results come back positive for arsenic. Anonymous letter has a lot of credibility right now. So with that piece of the puzzle, along with all the other circumstantial evidence, they're like, yep, this is more than likely what happened. So Mary,
Take her in.
along with her husband, John, who lived in the same home and had assisted with Raymond's care, are both arrested for the murder of Raymond Avery. Now, the DA does not forget about the rest of the letter either. While his team prepares for Raymond's murder case, they continue to investigate the claim that Mary also killed her in-laws.
Yeah.
So Mary's in-laws, Anna Creighton, had died on December 1st, 1920 at the age of 47. And her father-in-law, Walter John Creighton, died September 21st, 1921, also at the age of 47.
Huh. Maybe they're high school sweethearts.
Probably. So Bigelow finds that just like with Raymond, Mary took care of her mother-in-law when she fell ill. He also discovered, you might want to earmuff for this part.
It's been a while.
I know, it has been. That the woman's family pets had died around the same time with the same symptoms, and he believed those had been test cases.
I'm back.
So the DA pushes forward, and the following month, in May of 1923, Judge Edwin Caffrey in Newark, New Jersey, has the
Jersey.
bodies of I knew that was coming. Has the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Walter Creighton exhumed.
Oh my God. Ew.
You know bodies get exhumed.
Ugh.
Well, you don't have to be there because it's already happened and
Good.
it's not
Don't
your
invite
job.
me.
So Mary, Frances, and John are in jail awaiting trial as this is happening. And
Oh my
John, as their
God.
son, is served the notice that both of his parents are about to be exhumed. And he begins to cry and say, "Why would you drag my parents into this?"
Because they got poisoned.
Despite his tears, they continue. So, depending on what this examination finds, the prosecution may want to exhume up to 3 more bodies of family members who
What?
died with the same symptoms.
God,
Mary's
this is like a
grandmother,
tale as old as time. Like poison. I mean, everybody around you. It's like a web of poison.
Mary's grandmother, and 2 of her aunts.
Oh
Now, at
no,
the
not
time, the doctor
Granny.
had ruled that the 3 deaths were kidney disease or old age, depending. So, investigators are trying to piece together what exactly happened in the Creighton home the day Raymond died, because they've got 2 things going on, right, in parallel. And what they think happened is pretty bleak. Raymond, who was just 18 years old, he lived full time with Mary and John. It appears that at the start of April 2nd was when he first became ill, Mary had started to serve Raymond chocolate pudding, and then he became sick. The doctor was called. His symptoms were mild. A complete recovery was expected. Doctor thought it was a simple stomach bug.
No.
But Mary kept insisting that Raymond eat that dang pudding.
Mm.
And he wasn't enjoying the pudding.
What? Is this a Matilda situation?
Did Matilda eat pudding?
No, but the kid with the cake.
Oh, Bruce, 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 Bruce. He did it. That's a great scene. I feel
Ugh,
that
that's
every time
hard
I
to
eat dessert.
watch.
He did it, though. You know what I mean?
I know, but then he had to do another one.
But the
It
cake looked really
crushes
good.
me. It
It
crushes
crushes
me.
you?
It really upsets me.
I feel a lot worse for the kid who gets thrown by the pigtails, but maybe that's
Eh.
just me. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we are way off track. Back to this. So Raymond's having to eat this pudding,
And he doesn't
and
even want it.
he doesn't even want it. And he's making comments to the neighbors during this time that he's sick, that he longs for a solid meal.
What the fuck?
Like he wants to eat normal food.
Wait, he's just eating chocolate pudding for all of his meals?
I don't know, but it's the staple of his diet currently.
That's not good, even if it didn't have poison in it.
I know. And as much as I like chocolate, I don't love chocolate pudding. So
Well,
I'm
you don't
right
like
there
the
with you,
texture.
Raymond.
Like, you don't like tapioca either, right?
Ugh, I can't believe
Yeah.
you even said that word.
I know.
Oh my God, I just had a flashback to bubble tea and I want to vomit. Okay, so even Raymond is starting to become suspicious. Suspicious enough that neighbors will report at one point Raymond essentially escapes and he just starts walking to his previous home, which was with another grandmother and his other sister, who I'm assuming is a much kinder sister, Helen, who's the same age as him or close to it. He starts walking, even though it's a 20-mile walk.
Guys gotta get out.
Mary notices that he's gone. So she gets John, she gets the car, and they go out looking for him. Now, sources vary on what happened next. Some say that Raymond was forced back into the car and brought home. Others say she just convinced him. I mean, at that point, he's probably pretty sick. And he's, 5 miles into a 20-mile walk. It might have been a really easy sell. She might have said, "I'll take you," or "Get in the car. You're not well."
I'll give you a chicken.
What?
Like a chicken on the. I'll give you a rotisserie chicken to eat.
Oh, like to eat. I was like, I don't think a family pet is going to help. I think Raymond's concerned about the egg
Maybe
production.
it would.
Think of how scared Raymond must have been, though, because if
It's
he's suspicious
terrible.
enough that even though he's not feeling well, he decides to walk 20 miles to get out of there.
That's a lot of miles.
And then the car just sidles up behind him and Mary rears her head out. Says, "Get in the car."
So scary.
Doesn't sound like that, I don't think.
Get in the car, baby.
Yeah, I don't know that she'd call her brother baby. But before Raymond's trial starts on June 5th, another indictment is handed down for the murder of Mrs. Anna Creighton because traces of arsenic were also found in her body.
Dude.
They were not able to find traces of poison in the father-in-law they still have suspicions, but they were able to find arsenic in Anna Creighton. So the DA who's trying the case, his name is J. Victor D''Aloia. Daloa.
Huh. Is that Italian?
The origin doesn't matter when we're doing the pronunciation.
It does.
Anyway, J. Victor wants to charge the case separately. So all the focus is on Raymond's trial, even though they've got in the back, they've got that indictment for Anna Creighton as well. And then on June 18th of 1923, the trial for Mary and John Creighton officially starts. They're being tried together. It's a total circus, as you could imagine.
I thought in these cases they want to try people separately.
Well, remember in the early days, they do now, but in the early days they would do this a lot. Remember with the Lonely Hearts Club killers?
Yeah, because it always
they did that
goes
and then
poorly.
And then it always works out better for one than the other, usually.
Yeah.
The paper is using adjectives to describe Mary like pretty, pouty, pleasant.
Oh boy, we know where this is going.
Mm-hmm. And they're calling John pale. That's all the description he gets.
You're done, John.
They're like, enter pale husband John. Like, really? That's the best you could do there?
Send him to the gallows.
They're like, we've used all our alliteration on pretty, pouty, pleasant Mary, and we just don't have anything left for you.
You know what? Who they needed? The coffee bean and tea leaf writers.
And they did. So the couple have children. Their young daughter, Ruth, is having to stay with friends because both her parents are in jail.
How's their kidneys doing?
And all her grandparents are deceased. Mary Frances was actually pregnant when she was arrested. So she gives birth to her second child, John, at the detention center. And so when she would leave to go to trial, the nurse would have to take care of the baby while Mary was at trial.
Oh my God.
So they're playing that angle up big time.
Oh, of course. This
like the pretty housewife and the pleasant mother, the motherly love. And the children are allowed nowhere near the courthouse, not to protect them, but because they don't want any sympathy to be evoked from her being pictured with the two young children.
Got it.
So the DA believes the motive for Raymond's murder is obviously financial. He was said to have a $1,000 to $1,500 life insurance policy. There are a lot of numbers thrown around. I even caught an article where a man named Carlton Fox, who was an insurance agent, said that Raymond had an additional policy that could have been as high as $11,000 that Mary had urged him to take out in January of 1922.
Wow.
So I'm not sure. A lot of different numbers were thrown around. There's also, like I mentioned, Raymond would be about to inherit his part of the family estate. I don't think it's a lot, but it still would be, a few $1,000s. Now, the state's medical experts conclude that a lethal dose of arsenic was found and that no prescriptions Raymond was taking had it and no embalming fluids, even though he was embalmed against Dr. Boyle's orders, that the embalming fluids did not contain arsenic, so that the arsenic had to be from another source. Raymond and Mary's other sister, whom I mentioned before, Helen, testifies that Mary had sent her a letter breaking the news of Raymond's extreme illness and that her expectation was that Raymond would die soon. And so Helen had gone to the house to see Raymond, but she never went in because guess what? She doesn't like her sister, and she didn't want to go in if her sister was there. They don't get along. I think Helen's...
That's not a good reason.
No, I think Helen's smart. She probably would have had some pudding.
But think about that. Like that, it's tough. Like I get it's tough.
I don't. You're commenting on the wrong part. I don't know if she talked to Raymond. A lot of people talk to Raymond through the window. In his room. So she may have talked to him through the window.
Okay.
Dr. Boyle said that never at any point in Raymond's treatment had he thought Raymond could not recover, and he had never expressed to the Creightons that death was imminent. In fact, the day of his death, Raymond was starting to improve.
Until he got an extra scoop of arsenic.
So the state also has witnesses to back up this whole pudding theory. A neighbor by the name of Mrs. Batchelor testifies that she could hear the conversation in the house the night of the murder. Some sources say it was through a shared wall because it looked like they lived in a duplex, and others say it was through a window. It could have been both. But she says that she heard Mr. Creighton around 11:30 p.m. say, "Where are you going, Raymond?" And then a man she believes to be Raymond say, "No.
No more pudding."
And then Mary started laughing.
Ew, I don't like that. She's part of the 2 or 20%.
Not 20. So then Mary calls Mrs. Batchelor and said Raymond was making a funny noise with his throat and could she come over?
He's dying.
And she said, no, call a doctor.
Fucking
Like, this
idiot.
woman's not in the medical profession. She said,
Right.
call a doctor. Within half an hour, the doctor was at the house and Raymond was dead. Mary immediately tells the doctor, he was entangled in a secret love affair and I think he took something.
Okay, bro.
Suggesting that Raymond was heartbroken over a secret affair that nobody knew
He
anything
was
about.
trapped in a room with pudding.
Yeah.
No secret
Ugh,
affairs.
I really hate pudding. So before the night of his death, Mrs. Batchelor also said that she had urged Mary on more than one occasion to take Raymond to a hospital, but Mary said he was too weak to move. And the two women got in a fight. They didn't like each other. Again,
Yeah.
these people are like seeing for her for who she is. And she would not go back into the house after that. And she was the one you mentioned that she would talk to Raymond through the window and he would tell her that he didn't like the pudding and that it tasted funny. Now, Mrs. Batchelor did not write the letters, but it seems that she may have supplied some of the information for these letters.
Okay.
Mrs. Batchelor's son, Donald, also testified to overhearing Mary refuse Raymond's request for water,
I don't like that.
which the DA said was more than likely to allow the poison to work faster in his body because it wouldn't flush it through the system.
Right, because it's not getting diluted.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
But
Bubba.
here's the problem with all our stupid poison cases. The source of the poison cannot be found. And the defense theorizes that Raymond ingested the arsenic himself, either intentionally due to being melancholy.
No, he's trapped.
From this secret relationship, or accidentally because he worked in a store where it was sold. Anyway, they also argue over what constitutes a lethal dose, saying the amount found in Raymond's body was too small. And so they claim that the death was due to illness from just a gastro illness, gastroenterocolitis. Gastroenterocolitis, is that right? Well,
Yeah, I think
we'll put it there with the
that's
DA's
come
name.
up on other cases.
Yeah. And the whole defense really is that they don't need a defense because this is so absurd. They don't even call any witnesses. They're just they basically are just like, this is ridiculous, and I'm going to say that this is ridiculous by not even entertaining this argument.
Bro, it's so obvious.
On June 22nd, the jury deliberates for less than an hour, and the judge reminding them that they must be fair, even though one of the accused is a woman. Poor fair women. Both John and Mary are found not guilty.
I'm out.
And they promptly faint upon hearing the news. First Mary faints, then poor pale John faints. Maybe he's anemic.
Maybe. Wait, how is that possible? I feel like it's so obvious.
The crowd cheers for this pretty pleasant mother. I mean, my relaying of the story may be tainted by the fact that I know how this ends. So John's released immediately. He can go home. He can go get Ruth. I assume John, too. He can take the children. But Mary still has a second murder charge hanging over her head for the death of her own mother-in-law.
Oh, I hope she gets this one.
And randomly, a third charge of obtaining goods under a false name, which for that one, I think they seem to be maybe fishing a little bit to just throw everything at her, kind of like getting Al Capone for tax evasion. Like they're just trying. They're like trying to capture her. By the 25th, Mary is released on bail, and there's a lot of talk of dropping the charges. But by the end of the week, she's back in jail, trial set for July 9th. So just like with Raymond, the state pieces together what they believe to be the series of events the day Mrs. Creighton died. Remember, she was only 47, and she was a healthy woman.
Yep.
Mrs. Creighton suddenly became ill in November of 1920. Mary called for the doctor, who happened to also be Dr. Boyle. That's their family doctor. He arrives. Mrs. Creighton was suffering from nausea, and Mary said it was because she had eaten bad meat, pork and sausage. But Mrs. Creighton's brother, Alexander McLaren, testified that his sister had told him she felt fine right up until she had a cup of hot cocoa given to her by Mary.
Bingo.
Woman loves chocolate.
Yeah, she does.
It's supposed to mask the taste, apparently.
Makes sense.
I don't know. Upon examination, Dr. Boyle learns that Mrs. Creighton also has paralysis in her arms. And so he recommends that a nurse be called to sit with her for the night.
Wait. Has she always had
No,
it, or
no,
it's
like
because of after the hot chocolate?
after the hot chocolate, like
Okay.
it's part of her symptoms. And
Got
you'll
it.
remember Raymond, his limbs were starting to
Got
stiffen. It was
stiffen,
part
yep.
of the note. Yeah.
Oh boy.
So Mary and John actually get a nurse. Her name is Mrs. Morris. Now, Mrs. Morris testifies that
boy.
she remembers December 1st very well. So she was there the last day of November. She sat with Mrs. Creighton all night. Mrs. Creighton woke up December 1st and was doing great. She was sitting up. She was joking. She was saying she felt better. Her symptoms were
Okay.
gone.
Moving her arms.
So Mrs. Morris decides that she wants to give Mrs. Creighton a very light breakfast, test the waters, get her some strength back. And she asks a member of the family to stay with her while she does that. Helen, who's in the house at this point because she's talking to her
Phew.
sister and she's very young, says, I'll do it. Mary says, oh, no, I've got it.
No.
Mm-hmm. And so Mary was alone with Mrs. Creighton while Mrs. Morris was cooking her breakfast.
Well.
Mrs. Morris was gone for approximately 5 to 10 minutes. When she returned, Mrs. Creighton was visibly choking. Mrs. Morris described it as if the woman's vocal cords were paralyzed. She screamed to Mary, who was just sitting there watching, "What happened? What happened?" And Mary didn't respond, so she started yelling to Mrs. Creighton, "What happened? What happened?" But the woman couldn't speak. So she called for a doctor instantly while she tried to help her.
Did she just shovel arsenic in her throat? Like,
Mrs. Creighton passed away that morning.
jeez.
Mrs. Morris finished her testimony by saying the clothes Mrs. Creighton's family had put aside to dress her in for her funeral went missing and were found in Mary's possession, and she had been wearing them.
Bro, that's weird. That's a weird thing to
Very
do.
weird. How are you, pale John, just sitting there and being like,
Yeah.
oh, you stole my mom's dress
Yeah.
for her funeral? Like, how are you explaining
Yeah.
even the little things away?
It's really weird. Like, this is very strange. 2%, absolutely.
It just doesn't make sense. And a neighbor by the name of Mrs. Lundy says that Mary herself spoke to her and said Mrs. Creighton drank the cocoa and then turned to her and said, I feel sick. And she told Mrs. Lundy, this is Mary herself, I really think Ma took poison, but I'm afraid to tell Pa because he will say I gave it to her. And she continued by saying she thought Mrs. Creighton had a secret box in her room labeled poison.
What?
So again, setting up the same narrative that she did it herself, just like we see her do with Raymond 3 years later.
Right.
And the defense say, again, the theory that the poison found in the body was actually compounded in the medication that Anna Creighton was taking.
Come on.
And they argued that the amounts were just too small to cause any serious injury, and they don't know what she died from. The jury again finds Mary
No.
Creighton not guilty.
There's so much evidence, and then if you compare it to both trials, like, it stacks. Like, there's patterns here.
I know.
Why are people so stupid?
Because there's nothing, nobody saw her do it, and she didn't have it in her possession.
But it's happening with her.
I know. I agree. So who is this Mary Frances?
A bitch.
Either that or the unluckiest woman in the world, right? So Mary Frances Avery was born July 29th, 1899 in New Jersey, and there is no information
turn of the century
about her childhood other than that her parents died when she was a young teenager.
How'd they die?
I tried to find out so hard how they died, and there is nothing.
Damn.
I scoured so many newspapers searching everybody's name, and I did find one interesting blurb, and I have no way of knowing if this is her family or not, but I want to it was interesting to me, so I want to share it. So Mary was born in Rahway, New Jersey.
Okay.
And then she moved to Newark when she was about 14. And so this is from January 12th, 1911, the Perth Amboy Evening News. Quote, death hits family hard, Rahway, January 12th. Mrs. Fanny Avery, widow of Charles Avery, died yesterday at her home, 106 Union Street. 3 months ago, Mrs. John H. Chambers, a sister, died. Tuesday, January 3rd, John H. Chambers died. And Saturday, January 7th, Richard Horton, a brother-in-law, and with whose family all lived, died. Mrs. Horton is now very low, and her doctors have little hopes of recovery. That's all it said. But
interesting how
it's
everybody's
interesting.
dying rapidly around her.
Well, I don't know if this is her family or not, but her name is Mary Frances. This woman is Fanny Avery. Avery's her maiden, like Mary's maiden name. And so she would be named after her mother or her grandmother. And then Raymond Charles Avery. This gentleman is Charles Avery.
Come on.
And it's in the same town. So I was like, is this what happened? But she would have only been about 12. So it seems unlikely.
I know, but remember in those times you're a little older than that.
Yeah, but still, I mean, that's like a bunch of people all at once. So I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know if this is her family. It was very odd. But also, if it is her family, even if it just happened by circumstance, that's got to hit hard on a 12-year-old.
Yeah. Right. Either way, either like you're beginning your serial killer career or you're devastated by all your family dying. Like both like traumatic in some way.
Both could be true, right? And again, I don't know if this is even her family. I don't know if it's her parents. I don't know if it's her grandparents. It was just interesting to me that it was the same town with the same names, Fanny and
I mean,
Charles.
towns back then gotta be little.
Anyway, so I don't know, but I could not find any information on how her parents died.
Oh my God. Real quick, do you watch Poker Face?
Yes.
We just started our new family TV night, and we just watched the one where, spoiler, the Murder Girl podcast helps one of them. I was just thinking about it as you're like digging into all this stuff.
Yeah. This is one with, what's her name? Natasha Lyons, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love her voice.
Yeah, that's her real voice.
I know. It's the coolest voice.
She's great.
Yeah. Well,
anyways, I feel like it's relevant. Watch the show. It's fun. It's really good.
About 100 years too late, but so, and the only really other information about Mary growing up is that school was pretty uneventful. She kept to herself. She's not part of any clubs or sports. She was not academically excelling. She met her husband, John, in 1917. John was in the military.
Yeah.
And soon after meeting Mary, he was deployed.
Yeah.
And they got married when he returned a year later. Yeah, World War I. He got married when he returned. So there is some talk later on of Mary being adopted after her parents died, but the articles make it sound like she was adopted by the Creightons and then married the son, which doesn't make sense because she would have been too old to be adopted.
Well, when her parents died, she was 14, right?
No, they just said when she was a young teenager. So we don't know when her parents died, but it says she didn't meet John until 1917. So she would have been 18 already. So I don't know if they meant, I have two theories. Either they meant that the Creightons took her in like family once she met John, or maybe another family adopted her from the time her parents died until she met John. I'm not sure. But she does also mention later on that her parents were Catholic and she had been practicing another religion because that's what her adoptive family had practiced. So I don't know what that means. I don't know how they're using the term adoptive.
Interesting. Okay.
So either way, Mary and John get married, right? And they're young newlyweds. They move in with the Creightons.
Big mistake.
Eventually, Raymond also moves in with the Creightons, which is a pretty full house.
Move in with Helen, bro.
It makes me curious where, again, where were Helen and Raymond staying before? And where have they been this whole time?
Yeah.
And I think this is the time when it's customary for even extended family or distant family is family and everybody comes together. It's a lot different nowadays, but I still think it's incredibly generous of the Creightons to take in Mary and her brother.
Yeah.
It seems especially kind when you find out that Mary didn't get along with the Creightons. Surprise. When Mary and John had their oldest daughter, Ruth, Mrs. Creighton started offering advice or butting in, depending on how you look at it, and Mary did not appreciate that.
MIL.
Right, exactly.
Gotta love them.
Yeah, but to be fair to Mrs. Creighton, Mary had quite a temper and would spread rumors to the neighbors, and things would often end up missing in their house. So maybe this is more of a DIL situation. Maybe the problem's with the daughter part of the in-laws here. And once Mrs. Creighton died, that's not helping anything. Mr. Creighton's got to be Do you think he was suspicious?
Who knows? Like, men back in the day like aren't really involved in the household as much, and maybe not. He's like coming home from work and like reading his newspaper and not paying attention, or he's really dialed in.
You're like, he might be emotionally tuned in, or he might be reading papers. Mr. Creighton, his patience, it seems, after his wife dies for Mary deteriorates because I bet
Ooh,
you she stepped into the head of the household
yeah,
like all in. I bet she was real bossy.
it sounds like it.
And he mysteriously becomes ill in the fall
Oh,
and
mysteriously,
dies within a week after his wallet was stolen.
dude,
Hmm.
girl is a problem.
This is
Oh,
all the history there is on Mary Frances Creighton until she's acquitted on not one but two murder charges. So after
unreal.
the trial, the Creightons decide to get out of town, and they eventually will end up in Long Island. John finds a job working at the county engineer's office, making $166 a month.
Is that good or bad for that time?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Eh, I probably not great because you're about to hear what happens. And in 1928, John also joins the American Legion, where he and Mary become best friends
Oh.
with Everett and Ada Applegate. So the couples go to
Stay
social
away.
events together. They go to Legion meetings. The Applegates also have a daughter named Agnes, who's between the age of John and Ruth Creighton. So the kids will play together. The families are friends for a while, for years, and
Until
they're so close. In fact, no, that in 1935, the Applegates decide to move in with the Creightons.
no, it's not a good idea.
At the time, the Applegates are living with Ada's parents, so Everett's in laws, and it's not going great. Nobody loves that situation.
Sure, but it will be worse.
But it's also the 1930s, and money is a
yeah,
little
Great
tight.
Depression,
hmm
Dust Bowl.
So the two families share a house at 12 Bryant Street in Baldwin, which is a section of Hempstead, Long Island. It's a little called a
Mhm.
hamlet, which sounds adorable. The families are able to basically split the expenses in half. But this is not a large house. I wasn't able to find 12 Bryant Street exactly. I think maybe the houses have been renumbered. But if you view that street currently, it's a house full of small craftsman type bungalows, which is what it was described in the
Craftsman
papers. So
bungalows.
we're talking about 2-bedroom, 1 bath.
Yeah.
And so Ada and Everett have a bedroom. John and Mary have a bedroom. Ruth and Agnes sleep in the attic.
What about John?
And John sleeps on the porch, which I assume is screened in.
You
I
hope
mean,
so, because they have real winters.
it sounds awful to me.
Oh,
I'm
it's
upset
very tight.
just thinking of that situation. So while living with the Creightons, Ada Applegate rarely gets out of bed. I'm not sure why. I don't know if she had an injury or if she was suffering from depression or
Suffering from pudding. We don't know.
I'm not sure. But she would holler orders from the bedroom to Everett to like get her what she needed.
She needs a bell.
Meanwhile, Mary's out and about cooking the meals, keeping the house in order. Apparently, she was a very tidy housekeeper, entertaining guests from the Legion. They had people over all the time. It's a hot spot at this place.
God.
And Everett apparently starts giving Mary a second look, and he starts flirting with her.
That's an
Now,
insane thing to do in this situation. Think how close they all are.
they're in like
physically.
1,500 square feet, and they're like,
Yes.
nothing's going to stop. We're at the tip of the iceberg.
Oh my God.
Yeah, get ready. So, according to Mary, at the start of 1935, the two of them were together like a man and a woman, Everett and Mary,
When and where?
while
Tiny
John was
details.
away at work.
Okay. Where is Ada?
Ada was asleep in her bed.
Bro. That's messed up.
This affair continues. Guess who's totally unaware of it? John has no idea.
John.
I'm concerned for John's awareness.
Well, he's also, I think, I don't know.
By the summer of 1935, Mary notices that Everett has a wandering eye not just for her, but for women around town. And he's also got a predatory eye for her own 15-year-old daughter, Ruth.
Ew! Stab him.
Turns out, Everett's been having sex with 15-year-old Ruth as well.
That's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
Stab him in the soft parts.
Sometimes in the same bed as his wife.
That's disgusting.
Although Everett said she was asleep.
Who? Which one?
Ada.
Oh, that doesn't
He
make
said
it
Ada
better.
was asleep and him and well, none of this is this. She's 15 years old.
I'm disgusted.
John still has no idea, by the way.
Pin that guy to the wall and leave him there.
Mary is pissed for a variety of reasons. She says she's mad at Everett for forcing himself on her daughter, but I think she's jealous.
That's not okay.
Because, and this is why I think that, because Mary
2%.
becomes concerned that Ruth might get pregnant out of wedlock. And then she finds out that Ada Applegate is spreading rumors about Ruth. And these rumors are really what piss her off, saying that Ruth is trouble, and it's because of Mary. So Mary decides to take matters into her own hands.
It's the wrong thing to be concerned about.
Exactly.
Kick the fucker out of your house.
Mary has Everett take her to the store to run an errand. Now it's going to be up for wild debate if Everett knew what the errand was for. Mary goes in, gets some Rough on Rats, and on Friday the 13th in September.
Friday the 13th?
Yep. She buys the Rough on Rats, which is a favorite murder weapon here at TTC.
Yep.
And so as I'm reading this, I think, okay, she's going to kill Everett.
Yeah.
Nope. Poor Ada Applegate gets a small dose of Rough on Rats in her coffee.
What?
Now, Mary's patient, and a few days later gives Ada a much larger dose. Ada is a large woman, so I'm wondering if Mary was just not good at knowing the right amount.
Oh, dosing.
Because Raymond and Anna were small. So if you believe that she's killed everybody, then she probably wasn't sure how much to give.
Got it.
After that second dose, Ada becomes violently ill. Everett takes her to the hospital. By September 25th, Ada's released and her symptoms have improved and she returns back home. Back at the house, the family eats dinner together. Mary puts a small amount of arsenic in Ada's milk. Nothing happens. The next night, Mary claims that Everett put a large amount of Rough on Rats in Ada's eggnog. Who the hell's drinking eggnog when you don't feel good? Ada became so sick during the night that Mary had to help Everett care for her. And Everett continued to feed her the eggnog. Ada became so ill she started to hallucinate on top of being, stomach distress. And Ada Applegate died the next morning. Cause of death is ruled as a heart attack.
Nope.
Now, Ada had not been a healthy woman, right, which we know. So police don't bother with an investigation. Her death makes sense. She'd just been recently ill. She'd been bedridden for a long time, right? But just like before, authorities receive a tip that points them in the direction of Mary Creighton. A collection of old newspaper clippings from 1923 appear on the desk of the chief of police.
It's Helen.
No, rumor has it this time, Mary Creighton had pissed off a bread delivery man, and he was like, nah, something's wrong with this woman, and he found all these articles, and he clipped them out, and he sent them in.
Good for you, bread man. Bread.
Yeah.
Bread.
We love bread.
We love bread.
We love bread delivery men. So the police have all these articles. I wish they did deliver bread now.
I know. Bread and milk. Give me some.
Yeah, it should be on speed dial. So the police round up all the adults in this house of horrors, Mary, Everett, and John, who, by the way, John is still so clueless, it's embarrassing. Like, how are you not maybe going, this is weird? Eventually, Mary will break down. And she said, October 8th, this is what she says, that Everett had found out about her past, Mary's past, and had used it to blackmail her to sleep with him. She then discovered that Everett was raping her daughter, although the term used in the papers is seduced. And it doesn't appear that she intervened until Ruth thought she might be pregnant. And then Mary's plan became to get Ada Applegate out of the picture so that her daughter could marry this 30-something-year-old man.
Excuse me?
Mm-hmm. She said
can
Everett
both die in a really painful way. I'd be fine with that.
She said Everett helped her because he too wanted to marry Ruth and he loved her.
No.
Everett
this needs to end well.
Everett said he had no idea Ada was being poisoned, but yes, he was having sex with Ruth Creighton.
Okay, put him away.
Dumbass John Creighton said, I didn't know any of it. Not a piece of any of this. He was like, I just go to the Legion and I go to work and I come home.
Is he not mad? Does he not want to murder Everett like I do?
I can't wrap my head around John. I just don't. There's a moment in time
It's your baby girl.
where the paper says he stands by his wife, but if Ada died like they think that she did, then he wants no part in it. That's the strongest you're going to get from John.
Despicable. Piece of trash.
Ada's autopsy confirms all suspicions, and the coroner finds nearly 3 times the lethal dose in her body.
Oh, shit.
Mary and Everett are officially arrested.
And they're gonna get away with it.
Yeah. Now, this is the 3rd arrest for Mary on a poison death. The 3rd.
Like, do people not take a step back and look at the whole picture? Like, can we
Nobody
view
knew about their
patterns?
past. People didn't know about it. They had moved around and it had
The
been.
DA or the judge would not look up at previous charges. I can't believe
now
that.
they know. Now they know. That's why
Yeah.
they looked at her. But I'm saying people in the community didn't know.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
12 years had gone by. Tons of stories start coming out about Mary during that 12-year span. Right? Because it's not like she just turned into a nice lady.
Yeah. She's awful.
I'm going to share these. These are unbelievable. So Mary was accused of stealing a pair of gloves from her neighbor at one point. You remember she was stealing at the Creightons too.
Mm-hmm.
Mary, of course, denies this, even though several people had seen her wearing the dang gloves. And she says it wasn't her. And to make amends, she invites the neighbor's 3 nieces over to her house for some hot cocoa.
No.
They all become incredibly ill. One almost dies from it, and they recover. Then that same neighbor's house catches on fire and accelerant had been poured all over the foundation.
So she's just psychotic because there's nothing to gain from that.
She's just mad.
She's a
that's what I'm saying.
psycho.
That's what I'm saying. It was Ada talking trash about Ruth and her that set her off, not
that her
Everett having sex with her 15-year-old daughter.
I just hate people.
She does not like when people say things about her. So charges were never filed because they couldn't prove anything. But if you ask any of the neighbors, they're like, oh, yeah, Mary Frances did that. Like, hands down, that's what happened.
Wow.
There are also multiple reports of other women in Mary's sphere over the years mysteriously missing money from their purse or becoming sick. Here's one. Another neighbor at another time named Mrs. Rem recounted a day where Mary was in her home for a quick visit and Mrs. Rem was getting ready to head out. So she said goodbye to Mary and she went upstairs. She left her purse sitting on the piano and it had $136 in it.
Bye.
When she came downstairs, the money was gone.
Yep.
So she went over to Mary across the street and asked her about it.
What the fuck?
And Mary was so sympathetic and even loaned her $36.
Huh. How did she get that?
What a weird amount. Like, I gotta, come on, do 18, do 40. Like, what is wrong with you? So Mrs. Rem
Oh my God.
is piecing this together. Like, obviously Mary took this, right? It seems so crazy, but you're thinking that has to be what happened. So Mary shows up at the house shortly after with some homemade chili, again, to repair this bridge. And Mrs. Rem becomes violently ill.
Weird.
So Mary says, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you've been sick. And then she brings over fresh milk and fresh homemade muffins.
No.
Mrs. Rem still not feeling great. So Mary shows up with an entire dinner for the family.
No.
And after Mrs. Rem eats it, she becomes unconscious.
Oh gosh.
The doctors tell her she's been poisoned.
And we don't put that together?
They're not able to prove that it was because of Mary.
But does that family believe that it was? Because they literally just got a shit ton of food from her.
Let me tell you, after she recovered, Mary takes the Rems to court for the $36 she lent them, and Mary wins.
I'm done.
The Rems are like, we're out. They literally just sell their house and move. They want nothing to do with this woman. They move from their home.
She's the definition of evil.
Exactly. Another neighbor, Mrs. Pollock, has her purse stolen.
She needs to get beat up.
The purse is later found in the basement by, I think it was a plumber. He finds the purse. So everybody assumes Mary took it, right? Mary says that somebody had thrown it in the basement through a window just to hurt her.
Nope, that's not what happens.
So she asks Mrs. Pollock, can we just forget this and just be friends? And so
No.
the woman says,
Don't bring over muffins.
the woman invites her and a couple other women over to the house for tea. Just as she's making tea, Mary interjects and says, oh, you sit down. Let me make you all some hot cocoa.
Y'all know.
Mrs. Pollock is like, I'm good. She does not drink the cocoa, but the other ladies do, and they go
One
home and they
smart
become
person.
sick.
Oh my
Yep.
God.
So there are stories of people getting sick from Mary's food, of animals getting ill, of a man who stayed with them for a brief moment and then nobody knows what happened to him. He's just gone. Rumors start flying that as many as 8 people could have been killed. So you have Raymond and Ada, we know for sure. They believe Mr. and Mrs. Creighton are very likely. And then the papers suggest that she could have had a hand in the murder of her grandmother and possibly aunts and uncles.
Right.
Ugh. So a few days after the initial confession, Mary changes her statement and she recants and says that Everett did not know about the plan to kill Ada, even though he was the one that had brought her to the market. She says he's completely innocent, that she killed Ada to get even with Everett for his treatment of Ruth, but also because Ada talked too much, which is the real reason.
Why would she admit this? She's like a classic narcissist who like will always put it on other people.
Yeah. So I definitely think it was Ada saying bad things about her that really set her off. And Mary's using Ruth as a way to appear like a protective mother because she knows that's more appealing to the general public, but I don't think that bothered her.
But how is Ruth doing?
She also, we'll get to that. She also admits during the second confession that she had killed Raymond to end his suffering.
Which she caused, to be clear.
Right. From the damn pudding.
Psycho.
So after the second confession, the media reports that the community's opinion is Mary did this 100%. Everett was like not aware of Ada's death and that he was tricked or manipulated. But they also, of course, blame Ruth. One neighbor reported the shocking story of Ruth hugging Everett while she was wearing a bathing suit. Give me a break.
I just hate people so much.
Ruth is 15. Both of her parents are in jail again because they're holding John as a witness and they don't want him to flee. So she has to go to a children's home.
I think that's better.
And she also has to see a doctor to see if she is pregnant. And everyone's main concern in town is to say that their son, quote, never went out with the Creighton girl.
That's not okay.
It's unbelievable.
I don't have a word for it. It's so disgusting.
Only the American Legion was like, bye, Everett. We're out of here. They kicked his butt out. They're like, see ya. Now, by the time Mary and Everett go to trial, so it's January of 1936, she has a different version of events. Mary does. Now she's claiming that Everett was the mastermind and it was his idea from the start and it was his plan so that he could be with her daughter. Why would you help with that plan?
You're disgusting.
So the trial starts. This time the adjectives are not as nice. She's no longer pretty, pouty, and pleasant. Sorry. The state's case starts out with the strong medical testimony of Dr. Alexander Gettler. He's a toxicologist for the state of New York. Ironically, he had testified in Mary's first trial, and he had actually helped the defense because there just wasn't enough arsenic evidence. But this time around, I mean, it's been 12 years, so I'm sure there's better tests, but also this time around, way more arsenic was used.
Yeah.
So he brought 4 vials to the trial, each containing arsenic recovered from the body of Ada Applegate.
Gross.
Because the poison spreads through the blood, each vial was labeled with the area it was found: brain, stomach, liver, and kidneys. Dr. Gettler had tested over 50 types of poison and did more than one test to confirm it was arsenic. They also, this time around, have proof that the Rough on Rats was purchased.
Yeah.
John Creighton is also forced to testify for the state. And this is what the newspapers report. Earlier, John Creighton, bewildered husband of the confessed poisoner, testified for the state in its efforts to electrocute his plump mate.
Stop.
Hey, they stuck with the P's, though, keeping that P theme going.
That sentence.
Side note, by the way, Ada Applegate was a large woman, and there is no mention of her without the descriptor of fat or her weight listed,
Oh my
or
God.
and often unwanted as a word.
Ew.
It makes me absolutely furious. Like every single time they mention her, they post her weight.
This unnecessary.
And it almost
It's
seems to create sympathy for
yeah.
Everett.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, that it makes me mad. I'm sorry, Ada. Ugh. So the DA, knowing how often Mary had changed her story, they read aloud her confessions. They're like, here are all her confessions, folks. And the Daily News reported it as stating, on June 22nd, 1935, I was told for the first time by Mr. Applegate that he had been intimate and had sex relations with my daughter Ruth, 15. He said that he was tired of his wife, Ada. He said that Ruth was a darned good looking kid and that
Oh,
eventually things would be so that he would have Ruth to himself. I was
no.
frantic that Ruth might be pregnant. I
That,
was also fearful that my husband, John, might learn of the relation between Ruth and Mr. Applegate and that he might kill Mr. Applegate.
yeah, as he should.
Yeah, but really? You think John's going to muster up?
Yeah, I mean,
Come
John's
on.
pitiful.
God, John's in a basement somewhere. Hasn't even seen the light of day. He doesn't know what's going on.
No.
That's why he's so pale. So Mary had gone on to say how upset she was by the whole thing, so sick that she lost sleep over it. But she couldn't kick the Applegates out because then John would surely know something was up. I can't handle.
No.
She said, this is another quote, Mr. Applegate would kiss Ruth passionately in my presence, and although that
No.
revolted me, I did not dare to interfere. You are
You're a
such a
bad mom.
liar.
You're a bad mother.
And there's no way that's how you're feeling.
No.
Like you're some meek housewife. You're killing people left and right for a couple of $1,000s and telling your husband what to do. Are you kidding me? She said Everett ordered her to either put arsenic in the drinks or serve drinks with arsenic after he'd put it in to achieve his plan of killing Ada. And she just did as she was told.
Sure.
And there was, I will say, before Ada died, there was another anonymous letter campaign of mean, threatening letters going to the home. And it was discovered that it was Mary trying to get the Applegates to leave.
Huh.
I don't know. But obviously
Girl,
that
too
plan
much
didn't
time
work.
on her hands.
Way too much. So when Mary takes the stand, you'll remember she's kind of been famously composed through all this and just this like pretty delicate creature in her first two trials. But today she's conveniently emotional and said that Everett purchased the arsenic, made the drink. She merely handed it to Ada as, quote, maternal instinct took over.
Oh boy, she's really trying to bite that up.
She also said that Everett forced himself on her, holding her past over her head and saying if she didn't sleep with him, he'd tell everyone, and that she didn't want to sleep with Everett, that she only loved John. Well, the state blows up that theory because turns out Mary Frances was also talking to a magazine to sell her own story for a true crime.
What?
So they had actually stopped any talk of the previous trials being entered because they didn't want it to bias the jury. But Mary accidentally entered it herself by doing this. So now they're able to bring up the past two.
Yes. Dumbass.
So these maternal instincts that she loves to reference, they don't stop Mary from allowing Ruth to testify on her mother's behalf. So poor Ruth, who's 15 or 16 probably at the time of the trial,
really
was forced to take the stand and said that her mother was innocent, that Everett hated Ada, and that her mother had no reason to kill Ada because she didn't even know about Everett and Ruth until after Ada died.
That's not true.
Which is not true. So Ruth is being forced to lie for her mother. Ruth had also previously said otherwise. She's then asked to recount all of her interactions with Everett, and they make sure to force her to admit that she had done similar things with other boys her own age.
No.
The paper reported Ruth answering the question with, quote, yes, said the child in a whisper.
No.
Applegate is like, I am innocent. I did not murder my wife. And he readily admits to the statutory rape charges. He takes a stand, and it seems that the tactic for Everett is I'll just admit that I did this bad thing, and then it will seem like I'm telling the truth. I think that was kind of the play. Like, if I admit to
Okay.
what I did, people will understand that I'm being truthful because I'm
Yeah. No,
admitting
I
to
get it.
something. But he is so unlikable. By the time he leaves the stand, the jury has fallen in hate with him.
I mean, we're talking about Everett, right?
Everett, yeah.
Yeah, he's a child rapist. So
Everett admits to having sex with Ruth starting the summer of 1934. So she was only 14, and this was before they had moved into the house. He
She's just
also
a
admits
baby.
to the fact that Ruth was in his bed with Ada as many as 5 times. And he said he had sex with Ruth once while Ada lay next to him.
This is disgusting.
There were also times when Agnes was in the same room, apparently asleep. Now, some articles will say that Agnes was also sexually assaulted or molested, but I couldn't find that in any of the accounts, and no charges were brought against Everett. So I wonder if it was just maybe something that's been confused over time because she was in the same room, sometimes asleep.
I mean,
But it's also very possible, right? And they maybe
yeah.
just didn't mention it. I don't know. A couple sources will bring that up, but I couldn't find any charges brought against Everett for that. Now, here's something interesting. Everett is absolutely adamant that he never slept with Mary Frances.
That's not what you should be adamant about.
Well, he said he didn't kill Ada. He didn't sleep with Mary. Well, because all these questions are being brought up.
But
And he slept with Ruth.
That's a crime.
I know it's a crime. And he knows it's a crime. And he's willing to go to prison for the statutory rape charge. Not willing, but he's like, yeah, I did it. But I think it's interesting that he says he didn't sleep with Mary Frances, because at that point, what's it matter if you did or not? That's the only thing that's not that you could have possibly done that's not a crime.
Yeah.
And I wonder, part of me wonders if Mary Frances made it up because she's probably jealous of Ruth.
Stop.
I'm serious. I think she is. She's jealous of Ruth, and I think that's part of the reason she did what she did. So I don't know if they were together or not, but the paper loves the angle of the mother-daughter love triangle.
I don't like it.
In this case, both Mary and Everett are found guilty of first-degree murder.
Good. Pieces of shit.
Interestingly enough, Mary does not faint on her guilty verdict, just her not guilty verdicts. She wakes up the next morning confident in her appeal, says it's just a big mistake. FYI, John's still coming to visit her, still sticking by his wife. Give me a break, John.
She literally killed your parents.
Absolutely. How are you not like, I'm
This
sorry.
guy's just an idiot.
Unbelievable. So on January 30th, both Everett and Mary are sentenced to death via electric chair and transferred to Sing Sing. John's finally released because remember, they've been holding him this whole time as a reluctant witness. And Mary writes a letter to Ruth.
No.
Which gets published in the Daily News. I have to tell you, John gets to go home and he gets to take John, who they call Jackie. He gets to take Jackie home with him. Guess what happens to Ruth?
What?
Ruth sent to a reform school because she had sex. FYI, Brooklyn Training School for Girls. Yeah, because she was sexually assaulted and raped by a disgusting older man. So anyway, she writes a letter to Ruth, which somehow makes its way to the paper. The Daily News reports it as this. Dear Ruth, Mother is going away. No matter what has happened to you in your life, be a good girl and look after the best man you have ever had, your father. Whatever the judge tells you to do, be sure to do it because it is for your good. You and Jackie are all that Daddy has. Make every effort to help in this very trying situation. I love you all. Please pray for me. Lovingly, Mother.
God.
I've never been more nauseous. So this is a girl who's been abused for over a year and then forced into this situation to live with her abuser, and her mother's telling her to be a good girl and take care of her father. John Creighton probably doesn't even know where he is. He's fine.
Yeah.
The next blurb you hear about Mary, now she's in prison awaiting all her appeals. And there's an interaction with another female at the time happens to be on death row, so this is like a big deal. And the papers are reporting everything, and they've interacted in the prison yard. They literally
Jeez.
just said hello to each other, and it was an entire article.
Slow month for news.
I was like, wow, did they have a fight? Like, was somebody injured? Nope. They said hi. And Mary requests to start playing handball in the yard because she's starting to put on a little weight.
God forbid.
Yeah, the things you worry about. So while waiting for appeal, it's not going as she might expect, and the cracks of her reality start to shine through. And she starts to be reported to have as having some pretty serious insomnia. She starts getting nervous. Her appeal is finally
Good.
heard at the end of May, and the court states, after a careful examination of the evidence in this case and the ruling of the trial court, we can find no reason for disturbing the verdict of the jury and therefore affirm the conviction of both defendants.
Hmm.
So now Mary completely falls apart.
Good.
She's no longer able to speak or walk. They say it is due to her extreme fear of the electric chair, and Mary's legal team tries 2 other tactics to save her life. They claim that she is not mentally stable, and Mary's examined, deemed sane. Then they ask for clemency due to her being paralyzed by the fear of her execution.
That doesn't make any sense.
I know, you should be scared. It's
Yeah.
not going to be pleasant.
And you deserve it.
The governor has her examined by his own team of doctors who conclude that she is faking her illness and the execution
Ha!
remains in place. John continues to visit Mary, staying by her side until the very end, and Mary converts to Catholicism
Okay.
before her death. That's where that came up, that her parents were Catholic. She says she's not afraid to die, but she worries about John and the kids because everything she did for them.
No, you didn't. You literally did not.
Really? Burning your neighbor's house and stealing her gloves? Was John in need of a pair of gloves? Were his hands cold? And I don't know how she's able to say these things because she can't speak. So she seems to be able to find her voice
Oh, yeah.
at certain times. So the day of her execution, when it's clear that there's no final call from the governor, people from the Applegate side visit her and ask her, please recant your story and tell the truth, which they believe to be the second confession, that Everett should not be put to death and should just be charged for the statutory rape and that he did not kill Ada. And Mary says, not changing my story.
Yeah.
And so on July 16th, Mary Frances Creighton was sent to the electric chair. She was executed first on the hope that she would have a last-minute change of heart and absolve Everett from the death of Ada Applegate.
Mm-mm.
She does not. And it's not necessarily because she didn't have a change of heart. She was actually unconscious. She had to be brought to the electric chair by a wheelchair. And that makes her the only executed person in New York to never walk to her own death.
Okay, random.
And some people believe she had been given morphine before because she was unable
Hmm.
to walk due to her illness. Everett Applegate was sent to the chair immediately after, and he made sure to state his innocence in the murder of his wife one last time. And that is the story of Mary Frances Creighton.
Ugh.
Right?
Awful.
I mean, this is years this woman was terrorizing people. Like, how far back does it go? And what happened in between that we're not even catching?
Yeah.
Like,
Terrible.
there could be so many more bodies.
Yeah. She's relentless. It's serial behavior.
And I know this is a weird thing to say, but there seem to be, when you have these poisoners, right? There seem to be like a poisoning personality where they fall on either side of the spectrum. One where they seem a little bit less scary and clueless, and they're just like, oh, I only know one way to solve a problem, and it's poison.
Yeah.
Here you go. And then there seem to be these like really intense, evil women
Yeah.
who are not only poisoning people for their own means, but are also infiltrating in their people's lives and manipulating at every turn and stealing and arson
Yeah.
and all these things. And I think when I think of that, I think of like Martha Needle
Yep.
versus Mary Frances Creighton. Like, they're very different. They did
Yes,
the same
completely
things,
different.
but I think I think Martha Needle had some other issues that are very different than what we're seeing here,
Yeah.
because this woman is just, if you said anything bad about her, you were done for.
Yep.
Completely done for.
Ugh, terrifying. What do you know what ended up happening with Ruth?
Yes, she led her own life. She got married, or had her name changed, and led her own life, had her children.
Good.
And I don't know
Mm.
what she did professionally. That's all I know. I don't know.
I just hope she healed and like found a better life because
Yeah,
it's a
I hope so too.
terrible, terrible situation.
It would be hard to get worse than that,
Yeah.
but I'm sure that there's no way you have a mother like that and don't have some trauma to work through for
Yeah.
a good chunk of your time.
Yeah. And
But I
then
hope that
mental
she did
health
it. The
practices
fact that
are
she
great.
kept on going is encouraging, right? Like she kept on going, and hopefully that the trauma that was instilled by Mary will phase out over generations, right?
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, she had to go to the girls' school, and then what'd she go back to? John? I mean, does he even know if she's in the home?
Right. Useless
He must have
man.
been just constantly destroyed by her, by Mary,
Yeah. Yep.
just cut down at every chance.
Mm-hmm.
He still didn't think that she killed his mother.
He's such an idiot.
How can you not think that?
Yeah, I don't think he's smart.
Yeah, well, certainly not self-aware. I mean, and she was, by her own admission, she was at least sleeping with another man
Right.
and allowing that same man to sleep with her daughter.
Uh, yeah. I can't. I can't with that part of the story.
I'm sorry for, and I don't know if Ada was a nice woman, but she didn't deserve that.
No.
And she did not deserve being in that household.
No. That was a big
And
mistake.
I feel really bad for the Creightons and for Raymond.
And honestly, like, I wonder if Ruth knew ahead of time before Ada and Everett moved in how he was being a predator.
He started sleeping with her before he moved into the home.
That's what I'm saying. Like, did Mary know that?
Oh, you said did Ruth know it?
Oh, no. Did
Yeah, I
Mary know
don't
that?
know. I wonder too, because if I
It
don't have a
just,
teenager, but if by some accounts he was flirtatious.
yeah.
Even if that was the only thing I was witnessing, I'd be
Bye.
all up in that
Out.
business.
Never see you again. Get the
Yeah.
fuck out of here.
And you would not be allowed to move into my 2-bedroom home. And I
You
would,
would not be allowed to visit.
here's the other thing. When they had company, because they often did those Legion parties, Ruth would sleep in the same bed as Ada and Everett. And like, that was something that everybody knew. She would
That's
sleep
not
there.
okay.
She's 15.
She's 15. That's
Like,
not
she's
okay.
not, I would,
Her mom
nope.
like set her up for this. It makes me so upset.
Yeah, there are some takes on it where they thinking Mary did this on purpose, almost where they call her a pimp, like pimping out her daughter.
Mm, it's just not okay.
Nope. And he would like take her for drives and get her gifts and all this stuff, and that take her to work. Everett would take
Ew.
Ruth. Yeah, but it shows you, it is amazing to see how, I mean, we are still dealing with this stigma. When you
Yeah.
hear stories about, 16, 17-year-old, 15, 16, 17-year-old
Like,
girls
what
with
was she
much,
wearing? Was she
yeah,
flirting back?
yeah, where
They're
she didn't stop
children.
him. Yeah. And these are people who are in their lives in a capacity of, she called him Uncle Everett, Uncle Ev.
Oh, that makes it so much worse.
Yep. Gross. All right. Well, what are your last words?
I hate people.
All people. What about the anonymous letter writer? What about the DA who kept trying? They tried so hard. They just
I
kept
don't
bringing
think
charges.
the first two trials should have been done.
They did everything they could. They really tried hard. They brought in medical examiners, they exhumed bodies. They didn't even want them to press charges about Anna, and they did it anyway.
Yeah, it's true. They're fine.
And I think you think back to, if you were in the situation of the letter writer where you're watching your neighbor get sick, the leap you have to make at that point because they have no other real information. The leap you have to make to that point to accuse another human being of murder, I mean, that's pretty courageous. A lot of people,
Yeah.
I think, wouldn't do that.
Yeah, that's fair.
They would just be like, I can't be that. Because your brain just can't go to that. Like, that can't be true.
Right.
That can't be right. I mean, I guess they would have seen Mrs. Creighton pass as well and Mr. Creighton, so maybe by then they said, okay, enough is enough. But still, it's just so unlikely. And you're not in the house, you're not seeing it happen. It's so unlikely. The fact that they went above and beyond to kind of get as much information they could and send the letters. And the same with the bread man.
The bread man.
The bread man's the hero, another small hero in this story. Yeah, this is why I couldn't believe that this story just kept happening. This story should
Yeah.
have been done in 1923 and it just kept going.
Right.
Just kept going forever.
I mean, this is history repeats itself on a very micro scale. It's
Mhm.
like you have to look at patterns.
Mhm.
Really terrible.
Well, who should listen today?
Nobody. I'm
Oh,
just
that's
kidding.
good. It's going to be great for ratings.
Who should listen today? I don't even know who should listen. Maybe people with like manipulative or narcissistic people in their life and just like notice some warning signs. I mean, arsenic is a little bit tougher to get these days, I think. Still, I'm trying to think like John and Ruth. I don't know. If you got a bully in your life, like do you really need them in your life? Maybe exclude them.
Yeah, because that behavior is on a spectrum, right? I mean,
Yeah,
she's at the very end of it
exactly.
where she's dumping poison and everything, but there are a lot of people out there
Yes.
who have all of the manipulative behavior and none of the
Yes.
violent behavior, and it can be
Exactly.
very
It's
hard.
toxic.
Yeah, it's very toxic and it's very hard to know what's happening, right? You go in thinking you kind of leave those relationships or those conversations going, "What just happened?
Yeah.
What did I'm so confused." And it
Right.
can really
Gaslighting,
yes.
et cetera. Like awful. But yeah, you deserve better. So if you're
Mhm.
one of those people, you should listen to this case because you can see how bad it can get.
Yeah, it doesn't have to get this bad for you to say no, thank you,
Yeah.
right? You can walk
And you
away
could
or
even
set
say
boundaries
no
before then.
without saying thank you.
Yeah, you can say no fucking way if you want.
Yeah, get
Whatever
him.
whatever you want to say.
Get out of here.
Pack
Yeah.
your bags, Mary.
Yeah.
Take your stolen gloves and your
Yeah.
funeral dress and get out of town.
God, that piece too, like so creepy. Like it's just like little stuff where it's like, okay, you didn't murder anybody. You're wearing the dress your mother-in-law was supposed to wear on her corpse for a funeral. What? What?
Yep. Why? Why are you doing that? Also,
Oh,
get
it's
John some
so
vitamin
creepy.
D. He doesn't have enough. He's got a severe deficiency and it's
Oh,
affecting his
pale
neurological
John.
cognitive abilities.
Yeah, maybe some New Jerseyans. So there's a lot of New Jersey action in this one.
Yeah.
Long Island.
Mhm.
And let's include plumbers. Plumber found that purse.
Real quick,
And
you know
yeah.
that my son's into Mario right now, who is a plumber,
Yes.
and the way he uses the action of plumbing is hilarious. He says, "Oh, Mario has to plumb some toilets."
That's great.
Find it hilarious. He goes, "Oof, he'll need to plumb that." Oh, we plumbed so many toilets today. But anyway,
Oh,
continue.
I love
Plumbers
that.
listen.
Plumbers, breadmen, letter
Bread
writers,
men or women.
or
All you
women.
bread men out there still delivering.
You are heroes.
Do a background check on the neighbors or the people who stiff you for the bill.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yeah. This is another case of like just trust your gut.
Yeah, right? Well, why was the bread man, like, you know what? I'm going to find me some
He
1923 newspaper
knew
clippings.
he knew something so wrong was happening.
I bet he must have heard, people must have been talking. He must have
Yeah.
heard, little
Little
chatters about it
tidbits.
and thought, I'm going to get the proof because this
Yeah.
lady owes me $72.50 for 80 pieces of bread.
What if he was alive now and he would have a murder podcast and solve murders?
I'd be impressed because he would be over
No,
100 years old.
no, but not 100.
Well, today on Murder Podcast, I hope I make it through the episode. Yeah, I hope he's alive and well. I mean, unless he was a bread man at, age 7. Guess we don't know. It's a wide span there.
Oh, Lordy.
Anyone else? Let's bring this segment home.
Let me just do one last thought. No, but we're going to cut it off at the bread man.
Nope. Hope you enjoyed that 30 seconds of silence. All right. Well, you can find us on all the platforms at
Tea Time Crimes with an S, because there's always multiple.
You can email us at
teatimecrimes@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Please rate, review, like, subscribe, send us suggestions for tea and crimes, and we hope to be back next week.
Unless we get poison.
Dun, dun, dun. Enjoy your tea. Bye.